He started with nothing, just a wild idea in a borrowed garage. They called him insane. Now he's redefined how the world shops, earns, and dreams. From books to billions, from Earth to orbit. This is not just the story of a businessman. It's the story of a man obsessed with building the future and then escaping it. This is Jeff Bezos. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Read Too Much. In the humid heat of Albuquerque, New Mexico, 1964, a boy was born not into wealth, not into royalty, but into modest chaos. Jeffrey Preston Jorgensen, later known to the world as Jeff Bezos, entered life not with a silver spoon, but with an unsharpened pencil and a head full of questions. His mother, a high school student. His father, a teen. The odds weren't great, the headlines non-existent. But even as a toddler, there was something different about him. Not loud, not wild, but observant. Always observing. Jeff's favorite childhood weapon? Books. While other kids were learning to catch a baseball, Jeff was learning how to build a solar-powered oven using aluminum foil and ambition. He devoured encyclopedias. He didn't read books. He scanned them like a data processor hungry for meaning. After his mother remarried a Cuban immigrant named Miguel Bezos, Jeff took his name, and unknowingly, a future built on relentless reinvention. The family moved to Houston, where NASA's presence buzzed in the air like electricity. Rockets, engineering, science fiction, it wasn't just the backdrop of his youth. It was fuel. In high school, he launched a business he called the Dream Institute. Yes, a teenager trying to inspire other teenagers to dream bigger. A little pretentious? Maybe, but also terrifyingly focused. This was not a boy who wanted to play the game. This was a boy who wanted to rewrite the code entirely. Chapter 2. The Bookshelf Gambler. It was 1994. The internet was still an exotic mystery to most people. A noisy connection, a blinking cursor, a place where no one really shopped. But one man saw something different. Jeff didn't just see websites. He saw an open highway where no one was driving. He found a number, a statistic that cracked his worldview wide open. The internet was growing at 2,300% per year. That wasn't growth. That was evolution. And Jeff Bezos knew what evolution demanded, adaptation or extinction. He sat down and made a list. 20 ideas. 20 products he could sell online. Software? Nope. Shoes? Maybe. But one thing stood out. Books. Millions of titles, low cost, easy to ship, and almost unlimited in variety. The perfect product for an infinite shelf. So he quit his safe job at a hedge fund in New York, a job others would kill for, and he jumped into the unknown. He packed up his car with his wife, a few boxes, and an idea scribbled into a business plan. Somewhere between New York and Seattle, Amazon was born on the open road. They settled in a garage. Not glamorous, not sleek, just cold concrete, cardboard boxes, and desks made from wooden doors. His first hires stacked books and handwrote shipping labels. They didn't have a shipping department. They were the shipping department. Jeff wasn't thinking small. He wasn't trying to sell books. He was trying to rewire commerce, to create a store that sold everything to everyone, everywhere. The vision was insane and brilliant. His motto? Get big fast. There was no time to waste. He didn't just work long hours. He lived inside them. 14-hour days, weekends blurred into Mondays, and mistakes were simply steps forward. He micromanaged. He obsessively tracked customer experience. If one package arrived late, it wasn't just a delivery issue. It was a threat to the mission. He pushed his tiny team like they were building a spaceship. In a way, they were. Orders came in. They danced around the garage like maniacs when they hit 100 in a day. Growth was the fuel, and Jeff had fire in his eyes. But under the intensity, there was clarity. He wasn't gambling on books. He was gambling on the future. A future where people didn't just buy online, they lived online, and Amazon would be waiting. Bonus Episode 1. Jeff, Star Trek, and Childhood Obsessions. Before he was the richest man on Earth, before he revolutionized how we buy toothpaste at 2 a.m., Jeff Bezos was just a sci-fi obsessed kid with a bowl cut and a dream. Like a serious sci-fi obsession. We're talking about a child who spent his summers watching Star Trek reruns religiously, who would later say, unapologetically, "I want to go to space not just to visit, but to stay." That's not a tweet. That's a prophecy. Fast forward a few decades, and Bezos didn't just build rockets. He didn't just launch a space company. He went full fanboy. In 2016, Jeff Bezos made a surprise appearance in the Star Trek Beyond movie. Yup, that shiny, blue-skinned alien with the booming voice and 0 lines of dialogue. That's him. Of course, he didn't just ask to be in the film. He negotiated with Paramount. He pushed. He literally brought his own security to the set and required 4 hours of prosthetic makeup to become a background alien, just for 8 seconds of screen time. But here's the thing, that wasn't a vanity stunt. It was a full-circle moment, a tribute to the imagination that drove him, a love letter to the world that raised him, and maybe, just maybe, proof that when billionaires dream, they dream in warp speed. So yeah, while some people buy yachts, Jeff Bezos bought himself a cameo in the universe that made him believe anything was possible. Sometimes, childhood obsessions don't die. They launch rockets. Chapter 3: Fire in the Warehouse. As Amazon began to grow, the dream got heavier. What started as a simple idea in a garage was now a machine. Complex, hungry, and impossible to slow down. But growth isn't free. Every book sold came with more headaches, more inventory, more customer complaints, more chaos. The warehouse was no longer a messy corner. It was a battlefield. Jeff Bezos had created a storm, and he was standing right in the center of it. Orders exploded. The website was struggling to keep up. The infrastructure cracked under the weight of success. Boxes piled up in hallways. Packages got lost. Employees worked through the night, sometimes sleeping on the floor between shifts. Jeff pushed harder. He didn't just demand excellence, he expected it. If someone couldn't meet the standard, they were replaced. Quickly, no room for feelings. The mission was too big. He believed that pain was temporary, but scale was forever. And then came the real test. One day, one of the fulfillment centers caught fire. Not metaphorically, literally. Flames tore through rows of shelving. Books melted into each other. Smoke poured through the vents. People ran, coughing, yelling. Emergency crews rushed in. That fire wasn't just physical. It symbolized everything Amazon was dealing with: pressure, speed, and unpredictability. Most startups would have panicked. Jeff didn't. He turned the chaos into momentum. He doubled down on systems, improved packaging, tighter schedules, faster shipping. What tried to burn Amazon down only made it evolve faster. That fire became part of the legend, part of the price paid. By now, Jeff was no longer a man with a bookstore. He was becoming something else, a commander in a war against inefficiency, a disruptor who treated delay as betrayal. His team called him intense. Some called him ruthless, but everyone knew one thing: Jeff would not stop. The warehouse would never be the same. Neither would he. Chapter 4: The Relentless Rise. Amazon didn't slow down. It sprinted. After surviving the fire, both literal and metaphorical, Jeff doubled his ambition. Books were just the beginning. His vision stretched far beyond literature. He wanted everything: CDs, electronics, toys, clothing, furniture. If it could be bought, it could be shipped. If it could be shipped, it belonged to Amazon. But scaling like this wasn't about adding more products. It was about reprogramming the very DNA of shopping. Jeff didn't just want to be a store. He wanted to be invisible infrastructure, a silent force running in the background of people's lives. That required obsession. Jeff began to implement the famous 2-pizza rule for meetings. Never invite more people than could be fed with 2 pizzas. Small teams, laser focus, maximum output. He created a culture of high expectations, borderline militant. Feedback was constant. Goals were aggressive. Success wasn't praised, it was expected. He told his team that their job wasn't to impress him. Their job was to scare him with how good their work was. This wasn't a company. It was a pressure cooker with a billion-dollar prize at the end. Amazon's interface improved. Search got faster. Personal recommendations became more accurate. Warehouses evolved into robotic jungles. Jeff pushed for efficiency in places others didn't even look. Every second shaved off a process was a victory. Customers loved it. Investors weren't so sure. For years, Amazon didn't turn a profit. It kept reinvesting, expanding, stretching its reach across continents. Critics laughed. They called it a bubble, a pipe dream. But Jeff smiled, because he knew something they didn't. He wasn't building a business. He was building a habit, the kind of habit people can't quit. You needed batteries? Amazon. You forgot a birthday? Amazon. You needed toilet paper at 2 a.m.? Amazon. It became a reflex, a dependency, and that's when it clicked. The world didn't want more choice. It wanted less friction, and Bezos was becoming the architect of convenience. Chapter 5: The Enemy Within. Growth is intoxicating, but it comes with a price. As Amazon expanded, Jeff Bezos became more than a tech visionary. He became a lightning rod. Every decision sparked debate. Every new feature or policy scrutinized. The company that once prided itself on customer obsession was now facing whispers of something darker: internal chaos. Former employees started speaking up. Anonymous forums exploded with stories about brutal work culture, 80-hour weeks, passive-aggressive emails sent at 2 a.m., and meetings where voices shook, not from passion, but from fear. Some called it purposeful Darwinism, survival of the fittest in Excel sheets. Jeff didn't flinch. In his mind, this was necessary. You couldn't build the future by playing nice. Pressure made diamonds, or it crushed you. Either way, the mission came first. Still, the criticism grew louder. Warehouse workers described being tracked down to the second. Stories emerged of workers skipping bathroom breaks, fearing they'd missed their productivity targets. Some were reprimanded by automated systems without any human manager involved. The invisible infrastructure Jeff once dreamed of, it was no longer just digital. It was human, and it was breaking. Outside, activists protested. Inside, the grind continued. But it wasn't just the workers. It was the culture. Amazon's infamous leadership principles were being pushed to extremes. Frugality turned into penny pinching. High standards morphed into impossible expectations. Innovation became a stress test, not an adventure. And for Jeff, this was still the game. He watched the chaos like a chessboard. Each piece had value, but no piece was irreplaceable. This mindset created enemies: journalists, unions, senators. Even his own shareholders started asking, where do we draw the line between ambition and abuse? But Bezos had an answer, one he didn't say aloud, but lived by. We don't stop. We optimize. He believed that discomfort was temporary, but dominance, that could last forever. And so, the machine roared on, ruthless, brilliant, and deeply human in its imperfections. Chapter 6: Eyes on the Stars. Jeff Bezos was already one of the richest men on Earth, but that was the problem. It was Earth. Predictable, known, limited. He wanted more. While Amazon became an unstoppable juggernaut on the ground, Jeff's gaze shifted upward, toward silence, toward the void, toward space. In 2000, in absolute secrecy, he founded a company with a name that sounded like a whisper from a sci-fi novel: Blue Origin. It wasn't meant to be loud. It wasn't meant to be flashy. Not at first. In fact, for years, almost no one knew it existed. But behind closed doors, in dusty hangars and forgotten airstrips, a team of engineers and dreamers worked on rockets, on engines, on escape. Jeff believed that if humanity was going to survive, it had to expand beyond Earth. He called it building a road to space. He wasn't interested in short-term tourism. He was thinking 100 years ahead. Reusable rockets, lower launch costs, colonies on the moon, factories in orbit. Crazy? Maybe, but Jeff didn't see it that way. To him, Earth was a garden, and every garden needs a fence. Space was that fence, a backup, a future. Of course, not everyone bought the dream. Critics accused him of abandoning Earth, of pouring billions into a rich man's hobby while the planet suffered. He answered in the only way he knew how: through action, test flights, new engines, autonomous landings. Slowly, Blue Origin moved from concept to competition. A silent rival emerged, one with a very loud name. Another billionaire with rockets and memes. But this wasn't about rivalry. This was about legacy. Jeff didn't want to just be remembered for Amazon. He wanted to be remembered as a builder of worlds, a guardian of species, a man who looked at the stars and didn't just wish, but built. He famously said, "I want my grandchildren's grandchildren to know that we did the hard things, so they could dream bigger." And for the first time in decades, Jeff Bezos wasn't playing catch-up. He was dreaming at full throttle. Bonus Episode 2: The Infamous Laugh and the Giant Clock. Before rockets, before yachts, Before the bald billionaire memes, there was the laugh. Yes, that laugh. Jeff Bezos has one of the most recognizable, exaggerated, unapologetic laughs in the world of billionaires. Loud, mechanical, slightly villainous. The kind of laugh that, if you heard it in a dark alley, you'd assume someone just bought the moon. It's become a meme, a soundbite, a viral signature. And yet, it perfectly encapsulates who he is: unfiltered, direct, and just a little bit obsessed with the absurdity of ambition. But let's take that absurdity one step further. What kind of man spends $42 million on a clock? Not just any clock, a 10,000-year clock buried deep inside a mountain in Texas. Bezos funded the construction of this massive, time-measuring monument to long-term thinking. It's designed to tick once a year, with a cuckoo that pops out every millennium. Why? Because, in his words, humans are now technologically advanced enough that we can create not only extraordinary wonders, but also civilization-scale problems. It's not just a clock, it's a message, a monument to patience, to responsibility, to looking beyond the next quarter or even the next generation. Is it a little eccentric? Absolutely. Is it also deeply symbolic? Even more so. So next time you hear that infamous Bezos laugh, remember, there's a mountain somewhere, quietly ticking, just once every year, because Jeff Bezos thought it should. Chapter 7. The Cost of the Throne. Power is heavy. It doesn't scream. It hums, quietly, constantly. And Jeff Bezos, by now, had more of it than almost anyone on the planet. His fortune had surpassed $200 billion. His influence stretched from e-commerce and entertainment to space and media. He bought one of the most iconic newspapers in history, not for vanity, for control. Information, he knew, was just as powerful as delivery trucks and rocket fuel. But the higher you rise, the thinner the air becomes. Jeff's every move was now under a microscope. His wealth was seen by some not as a symbol of success, but as a failure of society. How could one man own so much while others had so little? He rarely answered these criticisms directly. Instead, he smiled. He launched new ventures. He kept building. But behind that smile was a man who had sacrificed everything for this empire. Personal relationships had strained. His marriage ended. His days were mapped by the minute. His nights were lit not by dreams, but by screens. Power didn't isolate him. He isolated himself on purpose, because to lead something as vast as Amazon, as disruptive as Blue Origin, as visible as the Washington Post, you don't get to be soft. You don't get to slow down. You become a machine in a world that expects perfection and punishes anything less. And yet, in private, Jeff became more philosophical. He started talking more about legacy, about humanity's long-term survival, about consciousness, civilization, and timescales beyond a single lifetime. He read more science fiction than spreadsheets. He spoke of regret minimization frameworks, of living without looking back, of dying with the peace of knowing he didn't settle. Still, something had changed. This wasn't the hungry bookstore nerd from the 90s. This was a titan, lonelier, quieter, but still moving forward. Because if you stop moving, the throne vanishes. And no matter how powerful you are, the world never stops asking, what have you done lately? Chapter 8. Beyond Earth, Beyond Legacy. It wasn't enough. The billions, the power, the tech empires, it still wasn't enough. Because Jeff Bezos never wanted just to win on Earth. He wanted to leave it behind, not out of disgust, out of destiny. From a young age, space had fascinated him. The vastness, the silence, the potential. While others built rockets for defense or ego, he spoke of off-world colonies, of freeing the Earth from heavy industry. He envisioned a future where millions lived in orbiting habitats, self-sustaining, harmonious, free from the limitations of our planet. And Blue Origin was the seed of that dream. It moved slower than its louder rival, but its motto echoed louder than any engine, Gratitum Ferociter. Step by step, ferociously. Jeff wasn't interested in speed. He was interested in permanence. But critics laughed. They mocked his cowboy hat, his expensive dreams, his perceived detachment from Earth's problems. And maybe they weren't entirely wrong, because while Jeff looked to the stars, the world was still on fire. Climate crises, economic inequality, workers demanding better treatment. And yet, his gaze remained fixed above. Was it escapism or vision? That's the paradox of Bezos. For some, he's a symbol of capitalism at its most excessive. For others, a thinker, a builder, a futurist who dares to imagine civilizations beyond our imagination. In private moments, he spoke of legacy, not in terms of wealth, but in terms of impact. He wanted to be remembered not as a rich man, but as someone who pushed humanity forward. And maybe that's the quiet truth buried beneath the headlines, the memes, the criticism, the praise. Jeff Bezos isn't chasing immortality. He's chasing significance. And in a universe where time swallows everything, maybe that's the most human dream of all.